Hey, I'm Ben Avery. This is Strangers and Aliens, where we talk about that connection point between spirituality and speculative fiction. I am here to talk about Star Trek Starfleet Academy and episode 3. This is my fourth attempt to talk about Star Trek Starfleet Academy and just actually talk about the episode. I keep getting off on tangents about, and I don't know, maybe I'll release them somewhere, but I keep getting off on tangents about fandom and culture and kindness and not calling people idiots and losers just because they disagree with you and allowing conversation. I got to stop myself right now. I'm here to talk about the episode. Maybe I'll release one of those earlier recordings where I'll go off on the tangent. Let's talk about this episode 3. It's very interesting to me watching Starfleet Academy and just, of course, this is a school show. It's High School Musical in Star Trek universe, and I get that. And there are things about it that work for me, and there are things about it that don't work for me. And what worked for me in this episode was the thematic messaging, where they're talking about, hey, we are part of Starfleet. We are not here necessarily to fight wars. We are here to stop wars. And when people say that Starfleet is not military, they are wrong, okay, because they are armed and they are, they have the rankings and everything like that. They are there to fight. But whenever you see fights in Star Trek, oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes, it is to stop violence. It is to stop evil. And even when you have those morally ambiguous episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where Sisko is having to make these morally ambiguous decisions, or sometimes not so ambiguous decisions, it is to do things to stop the fighting, stop the suffering. And so this whole episode is all about, hey, empathy and patience. Unfortunately, I do feel like some of the thematic things got turned on its head when you actually reveal that the empathy and the patience is actually just so you can win the prank war. And look, I'm just going to say it right now. I didn't like this episode very much. I didn't like it because of the way it portrayed things. And I get people when they're saying, hey, I don't like Star Trek when it is doing this kind of weird, we don't know what our identity is. I'm talking about story identity and storytelling world identity. And yes, this episode was High School Musical. Okay, this episode was your typical, I'm gonna throw the word out there, high school, college shenanigans. Okay, but at the same time, I do appreciate what they're trying to say with it. Unfortunately, the things that water it down for me are, first of all, again, this is another bottle episode, but from what I understand, they built a large set and spent a lot of money on it, and it makes sense that they would do bottle episodes on the set. Someone said, Ben, I don't think I complained about not boldly going anywhere in the last 2 episodes. And someone said, Ben, I don't think they're going to boldly go very much in these episodes. And I think they're probably right. Whoever said that in the comments, I can't remember if it was on YouTube or if it was here, but yeah, you're right. You're right. It makes sense. They're staying on campus. Why? Because they are learning and they're going to school. And so I get that. This episode, the sci-fi wasn't there wasn't that much sci-fi either. I mean, one of the things I really appreciate about Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek The Original Series, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, and Enterprise, and even toward the end of Discovery, and then also here with Strange New Worlds, is at least there's meant to be these sci-fi nuggets, and we're going to look at, okay, what does the science-y stuff, whether it's technological science or astronomical science or social science, what does the looking forward at the sciencey stuff, how does that affect the interpersonal stuff, the human stuff, and what are we saying about the human nature as we look at that stuff? And this episode was about human nature, don't get me wrong, and there were sci-fi things in the background, and they were using transporters and blasters and they were laser tag. They were using those things but it was set dressing. It wasn't like front and center, like we're making extrapolations and statements. It was just, we're making statements. And I appreciated the statements. I really did. I appreciated the statements about why Starfleet exists. I appreciate the statements about wanting to, stop conflict, stop fear, and, not make decisions based on fear. I appreciate those things. but at the same time, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more sci-fi in it. So um, that's not the show they're giving us. They're giving us a show about college. Going back into this episode, I'll also say the things that I don't appreciate about this go back to the humor. And humor belongs in Star Trek. And some of the best episodes, especially going back to the original series, I remember someone made a statement after Star Trek 4 where they said, yes, about every 3 episodes or every fourth episode of Star Trek, the original series, they didn't call it that because it was just Star Trek back then. There wasn't Next Generation yet. But every fourth episode was a comedy episode. And you look at it, you have like a piece of the action, you have Trouble with Tribbles, and you have like, yeah, there's a multiple episodes of Star Trek that not only used humor, but that were, focused in on humor. Didn't work as well when there were some of the books. I remember reading some of the pocket books that were supposed to be humorous. How Much for Just the Planet? I don't remember liking that one very much. But Star Trek is a franchise that uses humor and hopefully uses it well. But again, they're hopefully using it because they have this sci-fi thing that they're looking at, their sociological thing that they're looking at, and then we're going to, have this fun adventure and maybe say something about life, the universe, and everything. And so humor belongs in Star Trek. But then it went for me a step too far with Lower Decks, where Lower Decks does not feel like it belongs in the Star Trek universe. Lower Decks feels like it would work great for me if Lower Decks was actually a TV show or hologram novel or whatever in the Star Trek universe, where it's someone writing things about the Star Trek universe and saying, "Hey, isn't that ridiculous? Isn't that goofy?" You go, "Yes, yes, it is." Okay. But instead, all that self-referential humor is meant to exist in the world that it is referencing and making fun of, and it doesn't work for me. And then this whole show, all 3 episodes of this show, Starfleet Academy, the humor just falls flat for me. It just doesn't work. Stephen Colbert, I didn't notice it until this episode where I realized, oh, that's who he was playing. It's that voice. And then you're realizing like the announcements that are meant to be just these announcement jokes. It's supposed to be like MASH, I think is what they're trying to be like. It works in MASH because MASH is a wartime comedy. Okay. Star Trek is a built world that is supposed to be us in the future. And so when you're making the self-referential comedy and you're making these over the top jokes, but it's not a joke. I swallowed my comm badge. What? If she's not human, I can understand how she could possibly do that, but that's not physically possible. You look at those comm badges, she just destroyed her esophagus. Maybe. I don't know what actually is that's swallowing there. I'm assuming esophagus. It's been years since biology, and I have to look things up when I'm helping my son with his biology homework. But anyway, it just doesn't work for me. And so you have those jokes and kind of those constant little, we're going to make these quips, we're going to be quippy, and we're going to have these characters. Now, the holographic character, Sam, she works for me because she is like a Data. She is like a doctor. She is not human. And so she's trying to figure out humanity by finding out what does it mean to go through this kind of forced adolescence. Also, I think I figured out what bothers me about the Chancellor, and it's not so much what the Chancellor does, being barefoot, curled up on the chair, just sprawling out on the lounge, the chaise lounge or whatever, or putting her feet up on the table, her bare feet up on the table. I think what bothers me about it is that Holly Hunter is doing a performance. I feel like Holly Hunter is not embodied a character. I feel like Holly Hunter is developing a character, and that she is acting, as John Lovitz would say, with a capital A, where she is, this is my performance as this character. And it's supposed to feel loose and natural and all that, but it just comes off as unnatural and stilted to me. It just doesn't work for me as a performance, I guess. But I think that's what bothers me. Also, putting bare feet up on the table, that also bothers me. Humor falls flat for me, and this episode was primarily based on humor. It was nice to see the Mugado. That was kind of fun, and it worked as the costume that they used it for. That actually worked, and that was a little bit of self-referential humor. Hey, isn't this costume ridiculous? Yes, it is, and it was back then. And we were trying to say it was real back then, and that works for me. But anyway, I like the message they're trying to say. Treat the world with empathy, treat the world with patience, and don't react to the world in fear. I like that. But the episode itself, just too much shenanigans. So, hey, until next time, thanks for listening. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below. Godspeed.